In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Spirit, God is one. Amen. Well, good morning, Joan, and good morning, Gary. It says they're a beautiful church, all sunny and warm in here. Good. And I hope you're making us a cup of coffee there, Joan. Hello, Gary. And I wonder if you're enjoying the nice sunshine, although it's been snowing. It was jolly cold this morning when I got up. There was a layer of snow all over the car, and it obviously frozen and defrosted and refrosted and I don't know what else gone on. There's a thick layer of ice all over the car as well, which was a nuisance. Anyway, it's a bit nicer than yesterday, and right at the moment, it's lovely and sunny. And Perkins is busy singing his little head off, and there are a group of people busy cleaning the church. So you might be able to hear them in the background as well at some point. Hello, Beverly. I hope things are well with you as well. Okay, today we're going to be looking at the second of the miracles that move things from chaos to order. It always reminds me of when I clean the house. Things go from chaos to order then as well, and everything ends up where it's meant to be, all over the shelves and so on, rather than dotted around here, then everywhere. And this really is what the Lord is doing. If you go back to the very beginning of the scriptures, in fact, for that matter, read all the scriptures all the way through, you'll find two interesting things. One is that things are meant to move from disorder to order, and from chaos to non-chaos or order. And they also move from a garden, from outside into a city, from outside into inside. And the city in the end, described in the book of Revelation, is a perfect cube in which there is no disorder, and in fact no darkness either. It is lit actually by God himself. So that's something else just to keep in mind when you're thinking about these things. Okay? And here we've had miracles, one after the next, of moving things from chaos, the chaos of the storm, the chaos of the man who's full of demons, to order, where the storm is tranquil and where the man is sitting at the feet of Christ and in his right mind. More people turn up. Good morning, Stella. God bless you. And Anton. Look at this, Anton. Look what I'm drinking out of today. Here we go. Anton's very clever thing. It says, every day is Christmas on this side, and every day is Pascha on the other side. So that's very good. Good morning, Elizabeth. Hello, Tony. I've just sent you a message. And good morning, Thekla. You're meant to be still in bed. You told me yesterday that you went to bed at a sensible time. I don't know. I'll send something around there to make you behave yourself. I can talk. I've been up half the night as well. Right. Good morning, Father Alexander. Happy Feast of St. Mary of Egypt to you as well. Dare we say, one of my favourite saints. Luckily, you've got no sense today. No, never mind. Right. Luke chapter 8, verses 26 all the way to 39. Then they sailed to the country of the Gadarenes, which is opposite Galilee. And when he stepped out on the land, there met him a certain man from the city who had demons for a long time, and he wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and a loud voice said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? And I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For it had often seized him, and was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles, and he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, saying, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. And they begged him that he would not command them to go into the abyss. Now the herd of many swine, was feeding there on the mountain. So they begged him that he would permit them to enter them, and he permitted them. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake and drowned. When those who fed them saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what had happened, and came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. They also, who had seen it, told them by what means he who had been demon-possessed was healed. Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. And he got into the boat and returned. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, Return to your own house, and tell what great things God has done to you. And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. There we go. Let's crack on. Oh dear. In fact, yes, you can all hear Perkins. He's been very, very tuneful today. Yes, they are. Every parish priest's favourite pericope. Well, actually, in some ways not, because of course you then have to think of something new to say. But there we go. It's like the other one is the paralytic that always seems to be coming up. It's nice to be able to preach on a passage that nobody remembers, and then you can say exactly what you said last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. There's something like this one here. You have to keep on thinking up new things. I've let the cat out of the bag now. Okay. So, lots of interesting things going on in here. I can remember when I lived in Yemen Arab Republic, as it was called back then. I lived in Sana'a. I lived out in the wilderness. And as you went towards Sana'a, you got to the city wall, which was a great mud wall. I think it's all been destroyed now, but it's a magnificent city, really. There was a ditch outside, and in the ditch lived a man who was equally as mad as this one. And frequently he was chained, and nearly always he was naked. And he used to run around screaming and throwing himself around, and often throwing himself in front of the cars. Quite often you'd see him running along the city wall, and children particularly would be throwing stones at the poor man. So he had an utterly miserable life. Anyway, so it's that sort of thing you have to have in your mind, of somebody living outside, away from where he really belongs, rejected, not loved, living in the tombs, living with demons, as good as dead. And we'll go through this bit by bit. We start off in verse 26, being told where the Lord, having calmed the sea, now arrives in the place of the Gadarenes. Well, actually, the best manuscripts say the Gerasenes, and it's probably more likely to be the Gerasenes than the Gadarenes. Almost certainly the scribes have made it fit with what St. Matthew and Mark say, which is Gadarenes. So there's a similarity between them. But there is a place called, spelled with a K actually, Gerasenes, on the east coast, was on the east coast of Lake Galilee, opposite Tiberias. And it's probably there that the Lord went. And it is a coastal village, which would make sense because it was actually Gadara, which is 30 miles inland. The Lord would have had an awful long way to go in order to meet the demoniac, and the pigs would have had an awful long way to go in order to throw themselves into the lake and drown. So it's unlikely to be Gadara, more likely to be Geresa or Caressa. Okay? Anyway, according to Luke, the moment the Lord gets out of the boat, a certain man from the city who has demons for a long time, who wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house, but in the tombs. And those are the first things to say about him. So he has all these demons within him. And as a result, he wears no clothing. Now, clothing was given to humanity as a blessing by God to cover the nakedness as they left the Garden of Eden. And wearing clothing, in certainly the Jewish mind, was part and parcel of what gave you status and meaning and so on. And although there are peoples in the world that wear absolutely nothing, and even in my mother's lifetime in parts of Kenya, people would be naked there too. Generally speaking, people wear clothing, and the clothing distinguishes people, obviously male and female, and according to age, and according to status, and according to their occupation as well. So somebody who's a farmer might well wear something that's different from somebody who works in a bank. Somebody who is a salesman of houses will wear a blue suit and brown shoes, whereas somebody rather who's a butcher will almost certainly wear a stripy apron over a white coat. Okay, so it gives you an idea, and sometimes also, what do you call those things? By the only people who wear them nowadays? A straw hat, a boater, or a York hat, something like that. And so a policeman obviously wears a uniform, an army, somebody in the army wears a particular thing, I wear particular clothing, and these things are about, there's a whole orthodox way of thinking about clothing actually, and there are books written about morality, about what clothing is appropriate to whom, and how much clothing, and how grand it should be or not. Usually not. You'd be surprised when you went to quite a lot of churches nowadays how grandly the clergy doll themselves up. But this man is wearing no clothes. In that society, people who were demented wore no clothing. People who were damned wore no clothing, so they're going to be executed, so they're executed naked. People who were prostitutes were stripped of their clothing. Slaves wore no clothing, and were given, a bit like Dobby, and were given clothing to give them status within the house of their new owner. And prisoners also wore no clothing as well, partly so that they couldn't run away. These things, obviously, they continue into our own society now. And often if you are ill or you're in prison or something like that has happened to you, your own clothing is taken off you and you're made to wear clothing that is foreign to you. So if you're a prisoner in England, all the clothing is taken off you and you get to wear grey socks, blue underwear, a blue t-shirt, and a grey tracksuit. And now your status has been removed from you. Okay, so there's an idea there. So clothing, no clothing, so no status. Secondly, he doesn't live in a house. Again, a house is about belonging. In a house often lived in for generations, it conferred status and place and belonging and history on that particular person. Instead of that, he lives in a tomb, and therefore he is as good as dead. Okay? This awful situation this poor man is in. When he saw Jesus, verse 28, he cried out, he screamed, that really means, and it's clear in the Greek, and fell down. He's not doing a prostration, he falls down before him, and with a loud voice shouts out, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." So first of all, he falls down. He collapses in front of the Lord. The demons have been holding him up, but it's the demons that collapse, and the man himself collapses before the Lord. We, as you know, we stand before God. That's why when we're in church, we stand. Churches often have chairs in them nowadays, but these are for the weakness of the people. But in reality, we should stand within church. What strikes me as interesting that the priest, no matter what age, is expected to stand all the way through the entire service, whereas people who are hale and hearty and full of muscles and young and vigorous find that after 2 minutes of standing they're exhausted and need to sit down. But we stand in the presence of God. As children of God, we stand in his presence. We don't collapse on the floor, except for certain occasions when we do so for certain reasons. Like we're venerating a tomb, or venerating an icon or a relic, or we are prostrating ourselves during the week before the consecrated bread and wine, or something along those lines. Okay. One or two other occasions you do it as well. Anyway, this man collapses before the Lord. The Lord is in charge of the demons. The demons have no power even to stand before God. And they say to the Lord, T imi K C. What? To me and to you. This is a Jewish idiom, a Hebrew idiom. The nearest I can get to it really is in Zambia. They say things like, we are walking in parallel, which means there's no meeting point between you and I. I carry along this road, you carry along this road. We don't even diverge, in which case we would have met at some point. And neither do we converge, we're never going to meet in the future. We're walking in parallel. And this has the same idea as this particular thing here. What to me to you. We're walking in parallel. There's no point of contact between you and us, Lord Jesus, Son of the Most High God. They recognize him, Jesus, the Savior, Son of the Most High God. They know who he is. Even the demons know who he is. It's quite interesting, of course, that there are plenty of people who don't know who he is. We're going to come across some of them later on, and the demons do. And then these people who have been bullying this poor man by tormenting him for many years beg the Lord not to be tormented themselves. Okay? They can only torment themselves. God is not going to bully them. They're frightened. The Lord is already commanding the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for it had often seized him, and he was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles. And that's the same as the poor man that I remember from Yemen. And he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. So he has superhuman strength, or rather the demons do, and he's able to break the shackles that are holding him. In Mark it says he rubs them apart. Here he breaks them, and he's driven by the demon into the wilderness. The wilderness is a place where the demons had sway. It was interesting, again, I mentioned Zambia before. In Zambia, the people used to think that out in the bush, that's where demons lived. And they'd often come and say to you they hadn't got to you on time because they had been stopped by a demon, and they'd have to go around the demon and then carry on going. It's very interesting. When one preached on this particular passage in Zambia, they had no problems at all imagining what was going on and accepting it at face value. Whereas in Europe, we have much more difficulty doing that. So he's thrown into the home of the demons, the wilderness, away from the city, the home of people. Just remind you again that the scriptures end with the perfect Jerusalem coming out of heaven onto earth, There's this perfect cube, and this is where both God and humanity live together. Jesus asked him, saying, verse 30, "What is your name?" And he answered, he said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. Now a legion was 6,000 soldiers. And there are a whole series of interesting things about this. They're theories that people have. And they think, people say, there's a possibility that Luke is also telling us something about Rome here. He's used the idea, gators, he's used the idea of a legion to make us think about something else. And he brings in pigs here as well. Now, we know that there was a Roman legion in Syria, i.e. that side of the Lake Galilee, at that time. And we even know its name. And if I look at my notes, it's the Legio or Legio, the 10th, Fretensis. And their symbol was a wild boar. So they carried into battle a symbol of a wild boar above them. This, of course, would be horrific for a Jewish audience to see this wild boar. The other thing that comes with this, of course, that Rome itself was symbolized by a pig, a large, fecund sow, with 30 piglets. It's rather strange to think of yourself being symbolized by a pig nowadays. We don't tend to like the idea. But in Rome, that is thought to be a good thing. So it could be part of this story is about getting rid of, there's an element of overcoming Roman rule here. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. Well, the abyss was Satan's lair, the void, the place where really nothing is. And if you think about the idea of darkness, and remember Judas going out, and it said, "And it was night." So Judas goes out into ever-increasing meaninglessness, and the abyss is somewhere of ever-increasing meaninglessness. And rather like Judas, when he goes out into this ever-increasing meaninglessness, he destroys himself. So also, this would also happen, of course, to the demons too. And indeed, what happens to the pigs later on. So Satan's lair, the place where they really belong. So verse 32, "Now a herd of many swine was feeding there on the mountain," possibly a mixed area of Jews and Gentiles, in which case there's an element of sinfulness here too. And I said already, the pigs are a symbol of Rome. Secondly, they're a symbol of apostasy, if it is actually a mixed Jewish Gentile area or a completely Jewish area, is an even greater sign of apostasy. They're treated as being unclean by the Jews as well. And finally and fourthly, pigs were the most commonly used animal for sacrifice by both the Greeks and also the Romans at that time. So pigs had this really bad name. But anyway, there are a large number of them. So they, the demons, begged him, Jesus, that he would permit them to enter them, the pigs. And he permitted the demons then. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the lake and drowned. Okay. Now, there are all sorts of things we can get from that little bit there too. I suppose one of them is that animals, while they are valuable, they don't even have this, God has in some way protected this man from the full effect of the demons who wish to destroy him. And even 6,000 of them don't have the eventual possibility of actually destroying him. Whereas the 6,000 demons enter into the herd of pigs, and immediately the pigs destroy themselves. They are destroyed. The demons like to destroy things. So 6,000 had some effect, a big effect on one man, but destroyed the pigs. The pigs go mad and are destroyed, and that's what the demons want. And the second thing is, of course, the pigs themselves are unclean animals, and so the demons and also the pigs, as it were, are cleansed by the Lord. That all disappears as well. And it also shows that the demon actually has no power when they confront God. They're already coming out of the man on meeting the Lord. And it is an act of kindness towards the demons and generosity, which he doesn't need to give to the demons, to allow them to go into the pigs and be destroyed there. Okay? So you have all of those things, all of them coming out together over that. Meanwhile, what happens next? It's interesting, the reaction of the people who are watching. Then those who fed them saw what had happened, and they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what had happened, as the people in the city and the country, and came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Okay? So now the man is in his right mind and is clothed. Clothed and right mind is sophronunta. So it's where, you remember saying sophrony means having the correct mind, a sound mind. And when you're a sound mind, you sit at the feet of Christ. It's a great name, sophrony. A sound mind, clothed in a sound mind, sitting at Jesus' feet. He, like the storm, has now been, thank you, Christos, has now been pacified, and he's sitting there now as a disciple, sitting at the feet of the Lord. Okay? So the man who was completely nuts, he is now sitting there of completely sound mind. And the people who should have been caring for him, loving him before, but actually tied him up with chains and guarded him, are now frightened. They also, who had seen it, told them by what means he who had been demon-possessed was healed. Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. And he got into the boat and returned. Okay? And that is a terrifying thought. They had God in their presence. They had seen the power of God. They could see what God could do for one person. And they could have rushed back into their town and brought out all manner of sick folk, and other people had demons in them, and the paralyzed and people with leprosy and so on, and made prayer and intercession to God for them. But rather than doing that, they make their prayer to God. And their prayer is this: go away from us, leave us alone. I think Father Thomas Hopko also said about these people that in them there were demons hiding in plain sight. And rather like the demons in Legion, they each had their own demon, and the demons then said to the Lord, through the townspeople, go away. And the Lord goes away. And that is a terrible thing. Leave us, it's their prayer. And God leaves them. He gets into the boat, turns the boat round, and off they go. And then in one of those ways that Luke has, you have that sort of fuzzy screen they have when you go backwards in time in certain programs. There's something happened beforehand. It's got an ellipsis or something. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, return to your own house and tell what great things God has done for you." And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. That's an important thing. The man is sent back to be a missionary to his own people. Okay? And it is easily the best thing to missionize those people from whom you come. You speak the same language. You know the same customs. You understand the same ways. Let us say that I did actually. I was sent by the church, the Anglican church, to Zambia for a year in a wonderful way. And it was made quite clear to me that I went there to learn, not to teach. And I learned a lot. And one of the great things I learned was how different the gospel feels in a different situation. And how the same ideas actually come over in a very different way, depending on the people you're with. And how difficult it must be to be a foreigner, to preach the gospel in a foreign land, because the people don't understand you, let alone the gospel that you're trying to proclaim, let alone the other way around. I remember one of the priests there said to me that they said amongst themselves that when they go to a new tribe, they take a stone and put it in their mouth. And when the stone dissolves in their mouth, then they're allowed to speak. And it was a very interesting thing to say. Anyway, this guy is told to go back. And what does he do? He proclaims throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. And when we talk to people about God, that's all we need to do. We don't need to tell them anything we don't already know. We tell them what God has done for us. What did God do for you, Father Philip? And Father Philip then says what God did for me. What did God do for you, Father Alexander? And Father Alexander then tells everybody what God has done for him. And so on for everybody on this list here. An important thing there. Now, you can see here the way that we've gone from chaos to order. The way you're looking at it, maybe this way around. From chaos to order. I'm starting off from the left, the bad side of me, and moving to the right side of me, the good side of me. From chaos to order. And this is what we find in the scriptures as a whole. In the beginning, there's chaos, there's absolutely nothing, and God hovers over this nothingness, over the water, and slowly things move from chaos to order. There's a crowd. The Lord sits them down, if you remember, in vegetable patches, in nice ordered rows and blocks of people, and then teaches them and feeds them. And in the Bible as a whole, we begin with chaos, we end in the book of Revelation with this perfect cube. We can see this happening with this man as well. So you can compare the chaos and the order. So you start off with the chaos, demons. Order, Jesus. Start with him being naked. Order, clothed. Chaos, no home. Order, home. Chaos, wilderness. Order, city. Chaos, deranged. Order, sound mind. And all of this then comes to him proclaiming the gospel with obedience to other people, what God has done for him. So although he started with no home, as good as dead, living in the wilderness, deranged, and the nakedness showing that he was like a prisoner, a slave, a prostitute. He had no status, no home. He ends up with everything: a home, status, history, and even an activity to get on with. And he's one of the very first missionaries that goes out by himself, if you notice. The apostles are sent off 2 by 2 later, but this man is sent by himself to the place of Gadara, or the Gerasenes, to preach the gospel himself. All right? So it's a wonderful thing. It's one of the only places, actually, where people come out and they don't like the Lord. Otherwise, by and large, when people see it, they marvel and they want to have more of this. But here, they reject the Lord completely. And the same, of course, would happen to the church that Luke is writing to. Right, let's see what people are talking about here. And we said already, favourite one, Father Alexander thinks that I should wear gaiters. I have seen people wearing gaiters. I think even those people who are meant to wear gaiters wear them very infrequently. Possibly the Archbishop of Canterbury and York, and maybe the odd archdeacon, if they have to go and see the Queen, might wear gaiters, but otherwise perhaps not. They are rather absurd clothing nowadays, and they're worn by those people because, of course, you wore them in order to ride a horse. And the idea was that bishops and archdeacons could actually afford a horse, and their clerical clothing, their cassock, their rasson, was reduced in size to being simply an apron they tied on the front, so they could ride the horse without it getting in the way. Sophronunta, in your right mind. The opposite is Afron. That's not come into English. Afron sunne, another word that comes across in the Gospel. Jones says, Father Thomas Hopko, blessed memory, talked about the sentence, clothed and in his sound mind, that people do not like to see such a person, because such a person frightens them. How true that is. He was an extraordinary man. It's a shame he didn't finish off the thing that he was doing before he died. Father Alexander says, it's interesting to contrast the response the people here with those of St. Fortina's city in Samaria in John's Gospel. The response is not always the same, even when Christ himself comes. Indeed. Yeah, people either run towards or run away from God. Father Mark, good morning, your prayers. Good morning, all fathers. I was late to this, but got some much needed wisdom, your prayers. Alas, I'm not of sound mind, though I'm not naked either. And I try to sit at the feet of the Lord. Paula, who looks after the turkeys, and I put a picture of the turkeys on the site last night, or at least quite a good one actually, but there are two of them. Good morning, Father Philip and everyone. We used to sell gaiters in our shop before Wellies came about, I suppose. Very interesting to read the responses. Paula's shop, unfortunately, that no longer exists. It's still there, but she doesn't any longer sell things in it. It was one of the most interesting shops. It was like a mini Harrods. It had all sorts of things in there. Christos, you saw the photos. Good. There we go. Right. Don't forget, please, to pray for each other. Today, if you remember to pray, let's just pray for Judy as she continues to recover. And also we'll pray for Christian, who continues to recover, but they still have COVID in his ward, so I can't go and visit. And also please pray for Philip, who's recovering from 2 operations as well. Okay? And now everybody's going to start talking about turkeys. They're not just funny animals. They have such an overabundance of character for a bird whose normal end is get eaten. But they really are extraordinary things. Usually, they wake up in the morning and say to themselves, how can I die today? In that way, they're a bit like goats. Goats have a similar sort of feeling. But These three, they're extraordinary. Anyway, enough of turkeys. Please remember to pray for Judy and for Christian and for Philip. God bless you and keep you. Your prayers. Tomorrow, of course, there will be Synaxis. Sunday, God willing, there will be a sermon. And God willing, I shall be back in evidence again on Monday. Your prayers. Have a wonderful weekend. There's three of them.